So what do you do with the shattered dream? What do you do with the unmet expectation? What do you do when you have to turn to a plan B? You know, Scripture actually has a lot to say about this. The Bible's full of stories of people who find themselves in this all too familiar situation. You know, one of those stories would be the story of David. You know, we kind of pick up on his story when he's just a young man. He's a shepherd boy out in the fields, and there's a prophet by the name of Samuel who just shows up one day at his family's estate. And he basically says that David's going to be the next king, which just seems like kind of strange because you know, there is a king, and his name is Saul. And Saul has a son named Jonathan, who everybody assumes is probably going to be the next king. And then on top of that, David's got a lot of brothers, most of them much older and stronger than he is. And so it just kind of seems completely out there that Samuel would say that one day David's going to be king. So Samuel leaves and everybody kind of goes back to their business. David goes back to being out in the field where he's just a shepherd boy. There's one day where his father needs him to take some food to his brothers who are in this battle against the Philistines. And so David takes the food to his brothers, and this is that moment where they're fighting Goliath, and no one's willing to go out there and fight Goliath. But David steps into that moment and says that he'll do it. Well, you know the story. David kills Goliath. He instantly becomes this national hero. All of a sudden, Saul is a huge fan of David's. He loves David. In fact, he wants David to even marry his daughter. Now, all of a sudden, I think David actually starts to think that maybe that old guy is right. I mean, maybe I am going to become the king. Now, let me pause for just a second, because I don't want this to just be a story that you listen to. I want you to interject yourself into these circumstances, because you've been there. I mean, you've been in that place where it seems like everything is falling into place and all the circumstances of your life are lining up. And now, your dream might just become a reality. You signed the record deal. You got the promotion. You met the guy of your dreams. The pregnancy test comes back and it's positive. Your spouse finally agrees to go to marriage counseling. But just think about David for a second. I mean, up to this point in the story, I'm not even sure that David puts a whole lot of stake in this becoming a king dream. But now it's possible. Now it just might happen. But then one day, things start to change. As David's popularity grows, David starts to notice that there's something that's a little different with King Saul. Relationally, something just kind of seems off. And then one day, King Saul picks up a spear and tries to throw it at David, and David all of a sudden realizes, yeah, something is like way off. And he discovers that King Saul has grown insanely jealous of him and is trying to kill him. You know, he's now on the run, running for his life, and he doesn't feel like God is with him. He doesn't feel like this dream is going to happen. As a matter of fact, he feels like God's kind of been toying with him, just letting him get close to this dream, and now he's shutting the door. Now he's a fugitive. And where is God? And he does exactly what I have done so many times in this situation. He panics. He turns his back on God and he tries to take things into his own hands. He tries to really just take control of his life. You know, I think most of us tend to view our lives like one of those marionette puppets. You remember those? Puppets with all the little strings, and you kind of view life that way. You know, you think that you have this string that runs down to your finances, and you have this string that runs down to your marriage, and you have a string that runs through your career, maybe a string that runs to your children, and you can kind of at will get all those things to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. But eventually I think we all discover that control is the greatest of all illusions. You know, we're in love with this illusion of control. I like control. I like to know where God is going, exactly what He's doing, the exact route of how we're going to get there, and exactly when we will arrive. Now, if you continue to read in 1 Samuel 21, you'll see that David's problems continue to escalate. He runs into a high priest by the name of Ahimelech who wonders what David's doing, and David makes up this huge story and just continues to lie out of fear. His lies continue to get him in trouble, but he just can't stop lying and manipulating. Now, my question for you is, what does your pattern look like when it appears that your dreams are not going to come true? Do you start to lie and manipulate like David did? Do you reach for the bottle, pop some pills, overeat, retaliate? How do you respond when your dreams are being crushed? You see, David is making the same mistake that I have made over and over again in my life. He assumes that he understands what God should be doing. And when God doesn't handle things the way he expected, David just gives up. And we get ourselves into all kinds of trouble when we assume that God must think and feel as we do. And while I want and often pray for God's power in my life, I don't want to accept His timing or His calendar. However, if you and I are ever going to find purpose in the midst of our plan Bs, we've got to get to the place where we can truly surrender. We have got to get to the point where we can say, just because my will won't happen doesn't mean that God's will won't be done. I'm not going to try to control and manipulate what I can't control and manipulate. We've got to get to the place where we're willing to surrender the plans that we have for our lives so we can receive the lives that God's authored for us.